welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about two John Waters films, and I'll also cover briefly a documentary. So, the two extreme ends of John Waters. So it's the Pink Flamingos and Cry-baby. I don't have a disc of Cry-baby. I've got it streaming, but they do have a 4K, Lord, which I'm eyeing up because I adore Cry-baby. But I thought it'd be a good way to introduce John Waters, because I've not really covered John Waters much on the channel, by covering like the two extremes of John Waters. So, as you know, Pink Flamingos was an infamous film where Divine ate dog shit at the end of the film. It has other things in the film that are just as disturbing as that. but that's the one you go, type of thing. I don't think I even saw it. I think I was like, that. I can watch a lot of horror stuff, but that one did me in. And then Cry-baby is the exact opposite. Cry-baby is the kind of big musical with nothing offensive going on at all. And it's just like two extremes of John Waters. Because he is like a director who does have a sweetness to him when moved away from offensiveness. There is actually sweetness to a lot of his films. But there's also, like, he does love offending people, and he can go back and forward. He can be charming or he can be offensive depending on what he feels like doing. So I feel like these two films felt like a good film, good mix. Also in this Criterion, you get a documentary called Divine Trash, which was a film with the making of. It was shot in 90. It was finished in 98. It was all about big Pink Flamingos and making Pink Flamingos, and I'll cover it briefly when I cover Pink Flamingos. So Pink Flamingos is notorious. It's now in the National Film Registry for America, which probably annoys a lot of Waters critics. Like, America has taken this complete trash fest and made it respectable. So it's about the Waters grew up loving like the trashy side of filmmaking. He's obviously gay. He likes the kind of camper aspects of society, the more ridiculous aspects of society. Like for him, camp's seems to be like an explanation of some of our tawdrier instincts that we try and take seriously. So Waters does not take our pretensions seriously at all. He will send them up like non-stop. He enjoys watching our absurdity and point it out to us. And that's what's great about him. He kind of is like Paul Verhoeven in that way, of someone who just enjoys the stupidity of mankind. Just so much enjoys it because it's so like pure trash and we don't know it. And it's so absurd and dangerous and beautifully, hilariously awful. So So Divine has the reputation of being the filthiest person alive. She's on the run. Now Divine was this transvestite actor that John Waters knew. He's a guy who dressed up as Divine for the films, but according to the documentary, he didn't do this all the time. A lot of the time he was just dressed as a normal guy, but he could dress up when he wanted to, in social occasions sometimes when he felt comfortable, or for these films. So it wasn't like he was always Divine. But he was for these films. Divine was, as John Waters called Divine, his Marlene Dietrich. But in this case, it's a overweight transvestite playing the lead in your films, which just shows up the absurdity of humanity even more somehow. So Divine is the filthiest person alive. She's got her son, who's this kind of very kind of sexually active young man with lots of fetishes. She's got her travelling companion, and she's got her mother, played by Edith Massey, who's basically obsessed by eggs and is in this pen. And it's just this absurd family in the trashiest trailer you could ever see. It is so trashy. Just so trashy that it's impossible to explain how trashy it is. And you found out they actually bought a burnt out trailer for this. Very cheap. Did it up. and then burnt it for the film. You know, and the funny thing is, if you know, like, Homicide: Life in the Streets or The Wire, a lot of people who worked in John Waters films went on to those shows. So, and because basically John Waters built up a good crew and making his films in Baltimore. So by the time he made TV shows in Baltimore with David Simon, the crew was John Waters' crew a lot of the time. And the casting director was Pat Moran, who was one of John Waters' people, and production designer was Vince Piranio, who was one of John Waters' people. So Barry Levinson just used them as well when he was shooting stuff in Baltimore, because they were good. They knew what they were doing. In Divine Trash, if you know Homicide, you know that they're interviewing Vince Piranio on one of the sets of Homicide. It's the ME set. He's sitting talking about John Waters. And if you know Homicide, you know that set. It's like, I know that place. I've seen it multiple times in Homicide. So Waters did create this kind of production where he had all these people who would come back and make films with him every few years, and so he'd get a lot of experience, and a lot of the people stayed loyal to him. Like, a lot of the actors, like Edith Massey was always with him in the film. Mike Stoll, who is the villain in this film, was always in his films. There's another actress who played the companion of Divine. She's in a small part in all of his films, because these are his pals, basically. And Divine was in most of his films until Divine died. So there was this sense of community, but they were all under the ringleader of John Waters, who was a mischievous little scamp, is the best way to put it. He loved annoying people, so he started out making short films and then longer films, and even he admits some of his early films were not that good. There's one called Mondo Trasho, which he admits in Divine Trash, that was like, it was 80 minutes long, it should have been 20. Eventually learned how to edit, and because he had people around him who'd he'd hire equipment from, who would actually show him how to do the stuff, like edit. Like the guy who developed the footage for him showed him how to edit properly, so he would not look so amateur. I mean, he still looks amateur in a lot of these films, but less amateur than he did. Like Kim Newman pointed out that Russ Meyer had no ideas and lots of style, and John Waters had no style but lots of ideas. And that kind of, I mean, John Waters' style, but not in the filmmaking. He's the actors and everything else is there to deliver his dialogue and his gaudy images. So it's like this world that's set in Baltimore, but it's basically an alternative America where all the freaks hang out. And it is basically a thing of what's not covered in mainstream media. Mainstream media likes to cover the respectable. And if you get any people who are eccentric, it's very patronising. Always has been. 40s, 50s media, that way. Even nowadays, the same way. It's almost like people who have made it into the mainstream saying, I'm not like those people, those weirdos who I used to be. I'm not them. John Waters has none of that. He knows everyone's a freak. So, if this weird... I'll finally get back to the plot. This weird group who are in this trailer park, and they're basically escaping from society. They've caused trouble. They're hiding out for a while. They just want some peace and quiet. But Mink Stoll and her husband are these like awful people who are disgusted at the fact that Divine is the filthiest person alive. And they think they're the filthiest people alive. And they have some horrible ideas. Like the husband is a flasher who ties this enormous thing to his dick to flash people. Which leads to one of the most funniest turns in that when he gets flashed and it's not what he's expecting. But I'll leave that for you to see in the film. I won't even describe it. Describing it would ruin it. She also has keeps women as slaves who her chauffeur knocks up so they can sell the babies onto lesbian couples, and then they invest that money in drugs near local schools. And it's just like this. She's the most awful person. She had dyed red hair, and she's horrible. She's a fetishist for feet. She's she's so mad that Divine is like viewed as the filthiest person. She thinks it should be her. And these are the villains. These are the ones that make Divine look good in comparison. It's like bad and so much worse. Because Divine is a troublemaker, but not on the same level as the Mink Stoke character. And basically, Waters knows where he's got a good in his cast, and he knows Mink Stoke can carry her scenes, and Divine can carry those her scenes. So he knows these two can carry the movie. They're the stars of the movie, and everyone else goes below them and gets scenes to do what they want. And apart from Edie and Massey, no one else really jumps out. They've all got a kind of Baltimore flatness, is the nicest way to put it, in their accents that Waters likes to use to have them say some of the most absurd things, of this flat accent saying the most absurd, offensive things. Obviously, he finds funny. Some critics in Divine Trash did not find that funny. They're like, why do you not hire decent actors? And it's like, it wouldn't work. Some of this dialogue would not work if said by decent actors. It needs the trashy, flat voice to make it funnier. And it's just because it also makes this idea of these people who are stars of their own lives, who couldn't make it a normal life, but who can be stars in their little ghetto, basically. The way you see people in their real life, and that's what John Waters is filming, that's what he finds interesting. He has them say the most absurd things and do those most absurd things, and dress up in the most absurd clothes. And it just works. It's just this world that either you figure it out and get into it, or you're thinking, well, why am I watching this? This is trash. It's that kind of thing. There's no kind of middle ground. It's like, either you really like it or you really don't. And obviously, it takes my funny bone. Doesn't mean the film is perfect for, even if you like that kind of stuff. Sometimes it does feel a bit meandering at times. You know, it's just one of the things. It's a low budget film. But the high points are so high that the low points don't matter. And most of them are technique, but if you actually made it slicker, the film wouldn't work as well. Like, the accents would be more waving on you if the technique was good. So it just comes together beautifully. And as you can probably tell, I'm trying to avoid... I'm giving away a few structural things here or there, but that's it. I'm trying to avoid everything that you probably won't have heard of. And by doing that, hopefully it means you'll be more offended when you see the film. Because there's some stuff in there that's grotesquely offensive, and you can tell John Waters is laughing his head off at it. So now we go to Cry-baby. Cry-baby is John Waters moved on from Pink Flamingos to do a bunch of other films with Divine, and the budgets slowly get bigger, and it became slowly more acceptable moving into the 1980s. And in the 70s, he was still in that, because it was very counterculture cinema. He was, because of Pink Flamingos, he was a granddaddy of trash, so he could make his trashy films in the 70s, like not polyester, Desperate Living, which didn't star Divine, and before Pink Flamingos did Multiple Maniacs, and there's another one I'm forgetting the title of. In the 80s, into Polyester, which was more soap opera-ish and bigger budget. It was very much a look at the 80s conformity. And then he made Hairspray, which is a big hit, at least by water standards, and it achieved mainstream success, and people were suddenly interested in him. It was like he'd been doing all these perverted films and suddenly made mainstream success with Hairspray because it was a sweet film, it's a dance film. It Divine as a mother of the leading lady, and everyone loved it. I mean, it was just one of those films that everyone just loved. Of course, some of the old school Waters fans would be like, it's not as offensive, what's going on? But they were even more choked out when they saw Cry-baby, which was a full-on Hollywood musical with Johnny Depp, when he was, before he was really Johnny Depp. This was like him, 21 Jump Street Johnny Depp. This was before he was known as a good actor. This was when he was basically a pin-up, and he was hating every minute of it. And so Cry-baby and Edward Scissorhands came out within the same year, and that turned it around for him, and then he went into movies, and slowly built his reputation up in films. So this is the big year. Even though Cry-Baby did not do well financially, it had an afterlife. It was a film that people liked, and that's what John Waters films do. They have the theatrical releases, but they're always around after that, and they always have an afterlife. Fans find them because they're unusual, they're unique. You can't make a normal film. It has to find the strangeness. So in this one, it's the squares versus the hip people. This time they're literally called the squares. They're like 50s Baltimore teens who love being squares, who love being good boys and girls and going to fetes and doing singing numbers. Everything's a musical to them. They have big musical sequences to show how much they love being squares. And to that comes basically the kind of rebels, the people who ride motorcycles, who drive old cars, and who basically are juvenile delinquents, basically. And Johnny Depp's one of those. But he falls in love with Alison, who's the granddaughter of the head square. And she wants to be bad because she's sick of being good. So she ends up running, going to Johnny Depp's big musical number. Because everybody sings in this film. The good guys, the bad guys, all sing. But one side loves singing to be rebels, and one of them loves singing to be the good people. And the thing is, Waters loves this absurdity, but he knows it's absurd. That's what makes it fun, is they're so genuine about it. Just the same way as characters in the Pink Flamingos are so genuine with being nasty and being horrible. These people are nasty, either being the kind of supposedly good people or the drag racers and things who are supposedly rebels, but they're all genuine about it. They all love it. It's them. It's what they want to be. And Waters just loves these movies. They're basically Elvis movies and Marlon Brando movies from the 50s, all done up as musical numbers. And as the film goes on, there's some dialogue scenes early, but as the film goes on, almost everything's done as a musical sequence. And it works. It's genuine. It just works. Like Depp, even though he doesn't sing his own stuff, he has to mime it. He really works. His leading lady really works. I've forgotten her name. I knew it before the video and suddenly it's gone. Amy something. But it all just works. And like Ricky Lake is who was a star of Hairspray, plays Depp's sister. She's always knocked up. Susan Terrell is his grandmother. Iggy Pop's his uncle Belvedere, and this Tracy Lords is the rebellious square who has become has joined Depp's crew and is Ludes. There's all sorts of weird characters in there. There's a character called Hatchetface, who's this ugly woman who's very loyal to Depp, and she's his boyfriend who's into her despite the fact that her face is all messed up. It's just hilarious. These characters are just over the top, in the same way the other characters were just cut over the top. But they're played by actors who can deliver lines, even if sometimes they're delivering ridiculous lines. But because it's a certain stylization, they can do it. It's stylization of a 50s film, and it's understandable, I think, to most people who might not get the earlier Pink Flamingos. Like, I think families can easily watch Cry-Baby and not get who John Waters was. And even the villains are fun because they're so ridiculous and so selfish, but they're basically big kids who, even their villainy is ridiculously childish. It's so silly, and they're gleefully laughing, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And as the film goes on, the situation gets more and more ridiculous. Willem Dafoe turns up as a evil prison guards, and you know, it's just like non-stop insanity as the film goes on, because it's so genuine for what it's trying to be, and all the songs are like expressions of what's going on with the characters, and you can see Waters is into it. Waters is really into it, but he does know the absurdity. Like by the end, people have switched sides, and people have seen it's better to compromise and be extreme, you know, except for the lead villain, who still has to be extreme, but it's done in such an absurd way that it's utterly insane. The whole film is so good natured. In the same way you feel like even like Pink Flamingo is so good natured, and its silliness and its anger and nastiness about how horrible human beings can be. It's still good. It's still bizarrely good natured about how absurd we all are. And this one, it's like in Cry-baby, it's enjoying her absurdity and how these people are just singing their feelings, and you know, because it shows you John Waters was a child of the 50s. He does love this kind of stuff, and both these films are really enjoyable if you're on the wavelength, but they're not for everybody. You know, it's just that's the thing, they're not for everybody, but they are for me, so I'd highly recommend them. So just go see them. You will not be disappointed unless you're very, very impressed, or easily offended, or can't stand musicals. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you later. Bye.